You are it. I mean, you are the founder of the hottest app. Co-founder of the hottest app that came along this year. I made you a little present. I thought you'd love this.
Oh my God.
Here. How happy are you?
It's very soft.
It is.
I am very happy. Our team is really happy and excited to be working on what we're working on, and it feels really great and inspiring to see how the world has been using it. So we feel really fortunate.
What is your goal for this year?
I mean, the way we view our progress is that we're just scratching the surface of what's possible with Periscope. This vision that we had when we first started working on the product, we've taken some really good steps towards, in the sense that we've built a manifestation of it and released it to the world, and it seems like people are liking it and using it. But there's so many things that we feel like we need to do, and much of this year is going to be not only working on that, but putting ourselves in a place where foundationally we're in a good place to build towards that vision. And what I mean by that is hiring a team, making sure we have the best team around to build the things that we need to build and support our operations. And so, in the last few months, we went from, there were 6 of us when we were acquired. Now we're 19 people. So we've been spending a lot of time just growing as a team, and also just building stuff that we want to see in the product, and fixing things that are broken, making sure the servers are running, and just experimenting.
You had this great idea of creating the app when you were in Taksim Place in Turkey, and you wanted to empower the people to broadcast live images other than just tweets. Ever since then, what happened, like the past year?
Well, I mean, the process of developing Periscope, it was really just a bunch of guys in a garage. I mean, we were Joe and I started the company, and then shortly afterwards we hired some of the amazing folks that you now see on our website, and we just spent 9 months essentially trying to figure out what Periscope should be, how it should look, how it should feel. We had the idea in late 2013 and started the company in early 2014, but the development process was really just, months and months of building and experimenting, using the product ourselves, feeling it and saying, oh, this doesn't really work well, this does feel good, let's just try it again. And it took us a long time to find something that we felt like worked. And then when we found something that we felt like worked, we were like, okay, well, now we have to make this ready for the world to see. And even if it feels good to us, it might not feel good to the world. And so that was a whole nother phase of our development process, where we were just tinkering and building and polishing. And then somewhere along those lines, the Twitter acquisition happened. But ultimately, we took the leap of faith and launched, and here we are.
What kind of feeling was that when you learned that at South by Southwest, all of a sudden this little cat arrived and took like the world by surprise, and it was a huge hit like from the beginning, and you were sitting there and your product not yet released, but saying, damn, we have the same thing, we want to, like, we've been working so hard on it. So what went through your mind?
I think there was a fair amount of serendipity, in the sense that, what are the odds that another company launches around the same time that we were going to be launched? But it wasn't that surprising, and B, it wasn't that earth-shattering. And the reason for that is we never perceived ourselves as being the first in this space, because we just definitively weren't. I mean, live streaming apps have been around since before the iPhone. Right. Before that, Justin TV was literally launched before the iPhone. And much of our development of Periscope and our vision for Periscope came as a result of observing what we really liked about some of those products and what we thought could be better about those products. So that didn't really, we weren't really caught off guard. It was interesting that the world started talking about live streaming. I think that was ultimately a good thing for Periscope, because it created a dialogue around, okay, well, live streaming, maybe, this year is the year for live streaming. And so I think that made everyone just conscious about the space in a way that if we were to launch, absent that, it would have been, hopefully the same conversations would have started. But so that's really the only observation we had, was it was serendipitous from a timing perspective. But otherwise, I mean, you can imagine, we were literally, I think it was a week and a half away from launching. We did not get caught up in a bunch of news about some other app, and like we had to focus on finishing our product and releasing it because, you know.
So you didn't speed up the game?
No, I mean, you can't possibly speed up the game that, like, we had a date already and we had shipped the app to the
What was the date? The original date?
March 26th.
From the beginning of the year?
Well, no, from the beginning, from the beginning we were like, what the hell are we building? And what should we call it?
Okay.
And what are the features you should have? But sometime after the acquisition, in January or early February, we picked a date.
Okay.
We said, this is the date we're going to have. And
right.
I mean, you just can't, especially with iPhone apps where you have to submit to the App Store and wait 2 weeks for approval. You can't just snap your fingers and move the date. And their launch was around a week and a half before, or 2 weeks before our launch. So,
what would you say your app does to television? Does it kill it?
I don't think Periscope kills television. I think Periscope has the capability of changing the media landscape and giving content creators, some of whom may be media companies that use television as their main outlet, to change their game and to connect with an audience that A, they may not be serving right now, or B, just connect with them in a different way. For example, CNN and Sky News and BBC, they're all on television, but they also leverage Periscope in ways that they can't leverage television. They can interact with their audience, and they can take them places that they may not have news crews and camera crews and satellite trucks. And so I think over time, what that will cause is media companies will look at platforms like Periscope as a tool to leverage to connect with their audiences and ultimately do what they're supposed to do, which is tell the news and share the news and tell stories. I think that people's relationship with television will change, because I think people 10 years ago thought of television as their entertainment source, their source of comedy, their source of news, probably exclusively, in addition to maybe like the newspaper. But I think that over time, people are finding other opportunities to connect with the world and understand what's happening around them. Twitter being a huge example, the internet generally, and Periscope being just another one of those threads, I think. So I think people's relationship with television will change, but to say that it'll kill television is probably a little bit dramatic, especially since television ultimately is a form factor. Television is me sitting on this couch looking at that 90-inch screen. It's a huge screen, actually. And you have to think to yourself, well, what's the appropriate content for me to watch on this television? If I want to go watch the new Star Trek movie, probably a better form factor than looking at my phone. If I want to connect with news as it's unfolding around me, I'm probably not going to sit down on my couch at home when I'm out and about in the day. I'm probably going to open up my phone and connect with the reporter who's in Nepal through my iPhone app.
Talking about the form factor, we have to address the VVS, the vertical video syndrome. So all of a sudden, the people are saying, "What? I cannot watch this on their desktops." Mm-hmm. So are you concerned about that? Is there a plan to switch it to the landscape mode sooner or later when we're all starting watching Periscope on the big screens?
So I'll preface this by saying that we're going to add landscape support.
You do?
Not today. I'm saying we're going to add it, absolutely. So that if
breaking news, guys. Yes.
If a broadcaster's happens to move their phone into landscape mode, the viewer should be able to do it as well and not have the comments come in vertically, which is what happens right now. So we'll absolutely work on that. I'm happy to talk about why we chose vertical as a primary format. You're absolutely right that if you look at a vertical video on your television screen, it's a terrible experience because it doesn't fit the whole screen and it just feels wrong. But that's not how people use Periscope, and that's not how people use their mobile phones. The vast majority of people are creating content like this and watching content like this, and a very, very, very small, probably less than 0.5% of people even try and watch a Periscope on a television screen. So we had to create an experience that served the masses, and we just had to prioritize. So that's why we started with just portrait video.
Why do you think it is people like you innovating media and not like the traditional media outlets themselves? I mean, this is happening over and over again, that people like you just come out of the blue and come up with something like Periscope, which should have been invented at New York Times or Washington Post or CNN for that matter. So what do you think is that?
I mean, it's a very interesting question. And I think that there's a lot of ways to look at that question. One is the innovator's dilemma. Is it's a classic predicament, right? A lot of these media companies, or take any industry that was highly successful in a time period through a certain sort of mechanic of being, changing that mechanic, changing that way of life is hard, especially when you have revenues on the line and your entire, the sort of disposition of your business is on the line. And so for media companies 10, 15 years ago, print was everything. A lot of the folks in that room, they made their empires through print. And then the internet happened and the digital revolution happened. And a lot of them are in this period of figuring out how do they keep this print business alive, which really keeping it alive probably means like having it hemorrhage as little as possible, because either way it's going to die over time. And how do you build up the digital side of the business? And I think it's really easy to get caught up in legacy and the really difficult balance of old business versus our new business, and doing that gracefully over time, and preserving the integrity of the company. And that's all, if you're doing that as excellently as you can try and do, that's coming at the cost of freeing up your brain power of to just start fresh and say, okay, everyone has a mobile phone. Everyone has internet. Could we build something that leverages that and lets people connect with the world? That's what we did. We sat unencumbered by any sort of legacy. We didn't know anything about the media business. We didn't know anything about video. We just sat down and said, all right, if we wanted to build a teleportation machine, what does that look like? And when you have that freedom of thought, it lets you have crazy ideas that you just try and test, and 99% of the time they're terrible and they never work, and maybe 1% of the time they do work. And I think that's generally why startups disrupt established companies, because very few established companies have the ability to say, let's put a bunch of people on the side and have them be totally unencumbered by our business and our way of life, and have them be unafraid to go create something that may totally demolish our own business. And that's a grave way of looking at it. And oftentimes it doesn't need to demolish the business, but it is disruptive. It's anyone who's in the legacy business would look at that and say, really, guys, like that's kind of like, that challenges how we think about this. Are you sure you want to do that? And that all gets in the way of just innovating.
So what do you think is more likely, that the tech people become journalists or the journalists become tech people?
I think that the innovation will be driven by tech companies. I think that I am very confident of. But I think you will see an interesting hybrid where, like you just mentioned a couple different examples, right? You could have tech companies like Periscope with no media background create something that may have an impact in the media space. You could also see small or larger established companies like Facebook continue to operate their products, but bring in people from the media industry, like journalists, to be on their staff and do something with their products. So I think that's an interesting hybrid. So it's kind of like three hypotheticals that you're posing.
Okay, can I make it more strict, because we're running out of time? Am I more likely to work for you? I'm a journalist, you're a tech guy. Or are you more likely to work for me because I'm the content creator?
Well, that's something that you'll have to answer. But I think that if technology companies continue to be pushing the envelope on doing new and interesting things, which I think they will, I can imagine that attracting content creators and journalists.
Can I give you my card? Would you hire me?
Sure. Well, I know I can trust you. You're a journalist, so.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time. I hope you have a great time here in Germany and see you around.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you guys for watching. Thanks.
How many people were in there?
Bye.